Hello everybody, my name is Elizabeth Podsiadlo and I'm known here in San Diego as the opera singing chef. And lately my passion has been going towards Sprigerle cookies. If you don't know what Sprigerle cookie is, check out these beautiful pictures. Sprigerle cookies are as easy to make as sugar cookies. The only difference is it takes a little bit longer, but it's very simple. Okay, so we're going to start out with our hartshorn. You need 2 teaspoons of a rich milk or cream. 1, 2. To this, we're going to add our hartshorn. Hartshorn is a very key ingredient to this, making this a successful process. It looks like an illegal substance. Yes, I know. Don't try taking a whiff of it, though. You'll fall over. It is an ammonia carbonate. And delicious not. You don't want to eat your dough raw while you're using this, but this makes a wonderful leavening agent that is only activated by heat, not moisture. So you can put this ammonia scented ingredient in your cookie and let this dissolve really well into the milk. That's the whole point of putting it in the milk, is so that it will distribute evenly throughout your cookie. That's the first thing you want to do in this process, because you want to let this sit for at least 15-20 minutes before you add it to your cookies. Now we're going to start with our eggs. We've got our hartshorn soaking in a rich milk, but now we're going to talk about the eggs. You want to make sure and bring your eggs to room temperature. They make a fluffier, higher cookie this way. And so you just let them come to room temperature, and then what we're going to do is one at a time, we're going to put them in our mixer. So I'll talk a little louder. So we're going to crack them one at a time. Just best, that's a old trick to make sure you know that they're still good. They all look fine, they smell good. It's rare to find a bad egg these days. There we go. We'll just keep popping those in there. We're going to turn up the whisker there till we get all 6 eggs into the mix. Turn this up. We're going to turn this up, and it's going to have to mix for a good 15 minutes. Well, the eggs have almost completely come to the end of the process, and look how much fuller the bowl is. They're just full of air, and that's going to give your cookie a great consistency. Throttle down. I set a timer. I'm making a nice pot of coffee. I'm going to enjoy my coffee while I'm doing this process. I just love making Sprigerle, and when I decide to make them, I just decide I'm going to enjoy myself and not be rushed. That's the key to the success of this. Not be rushed and be very excited about your end product. So we've whipped our eggs. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add powdered sugar. You might hear my coffee percolator in the background. Sorry about that. Okay, we're going to turn this on slower. Oh, before we do, I do encourage you to put, if you have shields for your mixer, this is definitely the time you want to use them, because this can get everywhere. Okay, so we're going to turn this back on a little lower this time. We're going to add the powdered sugar. We're just going to start adding. Notice I'm not standing on any ceremony. I'm not being too delicate, but I am putting it in a spoon at a time, heaping spoonfuls. You want to mix this until it's well incorporated and you don't see any lumps. You don't want any sugar lumps in there, although we all love sugar lumps. Now we're going to add our butter. I've got the mixer up a little bit. I'm going to throw this butter in. It hasn't been softened. We're going to go ahead and just dump it on in there. Mixery butter. It's going to get everywhere in there. There we go. I'm going to add salt. At this point, I've got the butter in here with the powdered sugar and the eggs, and now I'm going to add the salt, the hartshorn that is really dissolved now, and the flavor oil. I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of the salt, and I'm going to add a teaspoon of the almond oil. The amount of oil really does vary, and should you purchase a press from me, the recipe will dictate options as to how much of the oil, different oils you want. If you use anise oil, you'd only use a half a teaspoon, but I'm going to use a teaspoon. So I'm going to start with the salt.
How much salt?
Table salt, half a teaspoon. I'm going to give this a quick stir, make sure none of that hartshorn is residing on the bottom. And I have to tell you here, be super careful. If you get the hartshorn on the plastic guard of your mixer, it can leave a mark. It can leave a scarring on the plastic. I don't know why. So we're going to turn this up and mix it well. I smell ammonia now. That is totally normal. You do not want to eat this dough. It has ammonia carbonate in it, which is also called hartshorn. Now I'm going to add a teaspoon of almond oil. This is an almond oil, not an extract. Because I'm using an oil, the flavor of this cookie will last well into a month and over. If you use an extract, it tends to evaporate. We'll mix that very well. Oh, hello. Before we continue, I want to talk to you about hartshorn, ammonia carbonate, the most important ingredient of Sprigerle cookies. Oh, you can use baking soda or baking powder, but don't call me if your cookies turn out to be hard as rocks. I hear it all the time. Oh, I remember my grandma's cookies. They were hard as rocks, but beautiful. Well, they don't have to be that way. If you use hartshorn, which is the ammonia carbonate, it is a leavening agent that does smell of ammonia, and you must be sure that you do not sample the dough while you're cooking, or you're going to have a pretty good tummy ache. Now, hartshorn, ammonia carbonate, as it's called now, bakes out. It is activated by heat and not activated by liquid, which is why the surface of your cookie is able to maintain its gorgeous design. But we'll talk about the secret to that more later. Hartshorn originated in the Alsace region of Austria, where they would grind reindeer hoofs and form a powder, which became a leavening agent that produced ammonia. That's how it got its name, hartshorn. Hart was the German word for male deer. Kind of yicky when you think about it, but a true Christmas cookie that it had reindeer hoof in it. Well, today's hartshorn is made in a lab, so not to worry, no reindeers were hurt in the filming or making of any of these cookies. Back in the kitchen now. Okay, we're getting ready to add the final ingredient, the flour. This is 2 pounds of baking flour, just regular all-purpose flour. You can use unbleached if you like. First thing we're going to do is we're going to change out the utensil that we're using to mix it. Initially we started with a whisk, didn't we, to fluff up those eggs, but now I'm ready to change it to I use a blade with a rubber on the edge here. It scrapes the sides of the bowl very nicely, but if you don't have one of these, just a regular one is fine. At this time, it's very important that you put these covers back, and you're not going to go too fast. This is going to go a little bit slower. Okay, the mixer is whining pretty badly right now. We don't want to damage your mixer, so at this point I'm going to shut this off, and I'm going to take this dough and I'm going to mix in the remaining amount of flour on my counter by hand, and it's easy to do. What we're going to do is we're going to remove all of this Sprigerle dough, and actually I'm going to work with half a batch at a time. I'm going to take half of this batch and pull it out here. It's very sticky. And we're going to need to incorporate a lot of flour into this until it's not sticky, because you can't really make these Sprigerle cookies if the dough is too sticky. Meanwhile, what I'll do is I pull my bowl aside. I'll put a lid on it to keep it from getting dry, and I'll put that aside and I'll work with this. It's not so sticky that it's sticking to my hands, but it's just moments away from where it's going to start sticking to the counter. And this, I'm still working with the same 2 pounds of flour that I had originally in the recipe. So we're not pulling any additional flour in at this point. In order for your Sprigerle press to pull from the dough as you're pressing it in, this dough has to be pretty not sticky, not tacky. It's got to be able to release that press, or you're going to have a problem and you're not going to be happy with working with the Sprigerle. You may notice I'm actually standing on a stool. At my counter, I'm short, I'm only 5'2", so I need the leverage when it comes down to pushing into my dough, because having my upper body to push down instead of just my wrist will make it easier for me. So if you have a low table to work, that's great. Right now this dough is behaving very, very good. It's not sticky at all, and I will tell you, this dough, unlike other doughs, is very forgiving. If you add a little extra flour, or if you take your scraps and put them in the bowl to use later, you can't taste the difference in the cookie, or at least I can't. I don't notice the difference. So it's nice, it's in perfect shape. I'm taking my rolling pin, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this dough, and as I roll, I'm going to keep shoveling a little bit of flour underneath to keep it from sticking to the counter or the canyon. Anyway, I'm going to keep rolling, roll. And what you want to do is you want to roll the dough out to about 2/3 the thickness of the press you're going to use. And today I'm going to use one of my favorite presses. This is the Double Rose. A gorgeous press, and one you can find on my website. And I kind of have made my own mark on this, and a lot of people really love this. And I'll show you how I'm going to make a beautiful teapot out of this round, very large round cookie. Okay, I've rolled my dough out pretty evenly. I'm going to take a very long spatula and I'm going to go under and I'm going to loosen it, because you want to make sure when you put your press in that you can release it from your counter. So I'm going to go all the way around and loosen it, and going back around this way. Now I'm going to take a little flour and put this on the surface. This will help in the release. Now I want to talk about briefly 3 tools that are very important to this. We have our press, of course. We have a pastry brush, and we have a bamboo skewer with a good point. If your press gets a little dirty, or for some reason one of the things stick, you can get it out with the bamboo skewer and clean it with the brush. What we're going to do right now is we're going to put a bunch of flour inside the press to make sure that we can get the impression of this beautiful flour, and even the rims. Now I'm not using the whole thing, I'm only going to use a portion of it, so I'm going to go off the edge here. I'm going to tap it on the counter. I'm going to go like so. I'm going to press down, lift it up, and voila, we have a beautiful double rose. Now the excess dough that I see here, I'm going to pinch this off, put it in the bowl with that other dough. I'm going to make sure this is still released, and I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to fill this whole baking sheet with these teapots. You want to try to keep the same design on one baking sheet, because they'll all be pretty much the same and bake evenly that way. So you can watch me as I work for a little bit, and then we'll move on. Okay, I've got my first sheet of the beautiful Sprigerle cookies done. Now, I'm going to tell you the secret of maintaining that gorgeous image, the gorgeous impression on the cookie. The secret to this is allowing your Sprigerle cookies, your raw cookies that you've just pressed out and put on a cookie sheet, to dry for 5 hours, 5 to 6. Don't go less than 5, because what will happen is your impression won't be as clear, won't be as sharp. If you go, you could bake it now, but the impression will melt out and become softer, not nearly as crisp as it is. But you wait those 5 hours to dry, then you bake them, and we'll talk about that when we get ready to bake. But I will tell you that the patience is worth it. In this bowl are the scraps from the dough I was working with earlier, plus some of the dough I hadn't mixed the extra flour in. At this point, you just pull this out and mix additional flour to it, plus a little of that sticky dough. Like I said, this dough is extremely forgiving, so you won't know it in the texture. We'll just mix all this together, and once again, we'll have a nice bit of dough to work with, a nice batch of dough. We're going to make it so that it's not sticky, not tacky, and we'll go from there. Well, it's been more than 5 hours since I pressed out all of those Sprigerle cookies. You watched as I pressed out the teapots, but look how many more cookies one batch of Sprigerle makes. This is the Baroque Owl press. It's one of my favorites. And then this is the 4 diamond press, which actually creates 4 cookies at a time, and then you cut them apart, and each one has its own border, which I just love because it gives them all a real finished look. Now these, of course, are going to take less time because they're smaller, but the teapots will take the most. Now, what I do is I've got the oven preheated at 300 degrees. Now, this varies according to oven, and we're going to bake it 1 sheet at a time in the middle of our oven. You want to make sure, of course, that your oven gets up to temperature. And then with the bigger cookies, I will bake these for 20 minutes. After 10 minutes, I will turn the pan around. I do not have a convection oven, so I have to turn my pan. And the same with the owls. The owls I'll do 20 minutes as well. Now, the diamonds I'll probably do for 15, so after 10 minutes, I'll turn them for 5. Well, the oven is preheated, and I'm going to go ahead and put my teapots in first, right in the center of the oven. I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. And after that 10 minutes, I'll turn it for 10 minutes. You don't want to brown these cookies. The signature look is a white look. Okay, my 10-minute timer's gone off, so I'm just going to take these and I'm going to turn them so that they bake evenly on the other side. Setting my timer for 10 minutes. Good to go. Alright, they should be done now. To see whether a Sprigerle cookie is done, the best way to do it is to look at the bottom. But don't try to do this when they're still hot because they're too soft and they can lose their shape. So we're going to let these cool for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and put the other trays in and we'll wait about 5 minutes and we'll look at the bottoms of these and see how they're doing. Okay, they've cooled at more than 5 minutes at this point, and I can turn it over and you can see that there are no wet spots in the center. Sometimes they will look like there's a little bit of an oil spot in the center. If that's the case, you need to bake them longer. These look perfect. It's a nice even coloring on the bottom, gorgeous cookies. Before you pack them up, you want to make sure they're nice and cool, otherwise they just don't dry well that way. So wait till they're nice and cool, but then keep them in a tin or a Tupperware and they can last up to a month. Yes, a Sprigerle cookie can last up to a month, and the hallmark of a cookie made with the hartshorn leavening agent is that it'll stay soft in the center, building a crust on the outer edge, but the flavor continues to build because we use the flavor oils and not extracts. Anyway, I hope you'll give this a try. I hope you found this video informative, and I want to thank you for coming into my kitchen, and I hope this will start a great tradition for you and your family. Enjoy.